Emmett Till was only 14 years old when he said goodbye to his mother for the last time. He was traveling from his home in Chicago, Illinois to Money, Mississippi by train in order to visit some family in the South. No one knew that this was his last train ride. As an African-American boy, Emmett Till would face prejudice no matter where he went. He lived in a time period in which racial prejudice was prevalent throughout all of society. This racism is what would later cause his death. While in Money, Till made friends with some of the local boys. It was to these friends that he bragged about how he had a white girlfriend back in Chicago. This bragging then prompted his friends to dare him to go into a store and flirt with the white woman behind the counter. The woman, Carolyn Bryant, reported that Till had entered the store in which she was working at and made crude comments towards her as well as grabbed her hand and her waist. When she threatened him with a gun, he exited the store, leaving her with nothing but a wolf whistle. A few days later, Carolyn's husband, Roy Bryant, returned home. She told him of the encounter with Emmett. This enraged Roy and caused him to set out with his half-brother, J.W. Milam, in order to find Till. On August 28, 1955, they abducted him from his uncle's house, despite his uncle's pleas to leave him alone. They beat him, tied a large fan to his head with barbed wire, and shot him in the head. His dead, naked body was then dumped into the Tallahatchie River. It was found 3 days later, only identifiable by the initials on his ring. His face had been beaten in. He was completely disfigured. It was because of this that his mother requested to have his body shipped back to Chicago, so that an open casket funeral could be held. She wanted everyone to see what had happened to him, what had happened to her little boy. Thousands of people came to his funeral. An African-American magazine called Jet took a picture of Emmett in his casket and posted it in one of their weekly issues. The picture was then picked up by a mainstream media source and circulated throughout the entire country. Now everyone was aware of what had happened to Emmett Till. This then reignited the fight for civil rights in America. A few weeks after Emmett's funeral, a trial to decide Bryant and Milam's fate took place. The prosecution put Emmett's uncle on the stand. He positively identified both men as the men who had abducted Emmett. The all-white jury, who came to a conclusion in just 67 minutes, and stated that they wouldn't have taken so long if they had stopped to drink pop, acquitted both men on the count of murder. No move was made to try them for kidnapping. It was months later, after the case had been closed, when the men confessed to killing Emmett. By then, nothing could be changed and both men walked free. This trial is what then influenced others to step forward and fight for their civil rights. Dory Ladner, a civil rights activist who participated in every civil rights march between 1963 to 1968, was inspired by the trial of Till's murder. She stated in an interview, "That's where the light bulb went off. Why aren't they being punished? And that's when I went on my quest to try to understand the whole legal system and equal rights and justice under the law." Emmett's murder even inspired Rosa Parks. "I thought about Emmett Till," she stated, "and I cannot go back." Emmett's murder brought light to the racial injustice that African Americans faced on a daily basis in the United States. His murder also brought to light the numerous accounts of lynchings that were taking place in the United States. Between 1877 and 1950, more than 4,000 black men, women, and children were lynched in 12 southern states: Mississippi, Georgia, Alabama, Arkansas, Texas, Florida, Tennessee, South Carolina, North Carolina, and Virginia were the states in which this minority was brutally beaten. Mississippi, where Till was murdered, had the most documented lynchings in the entire country. These lynchings were usually done without government permission by a small group or individual. They were often performed in public and took place outside African Americans' homes or in an African American neighborhood in order to intimidate them. Mobs and violence, as well as the lynchings, were used to keep African American children from integrating into white society. This method of intimidation was then spread throughout almost all aspects of the country until segregation was made illegal. In 1918, the Dyer anti-lynching bill was presented to the House of Representatives in an attempt to prevent mobs and violence against minorities. When the bill reached the predominantly white Senate, it was rejected. After that, nearly 200 anti-lynching bills were sent through the House of Representatives, but were all rejected by Southern senators. It was not until years later when Carolyn Bryant did another interview would justice be brought for Emmett Till. Timothy Tyson, author of the book The Blood of Emmett Till, convinced Carolyn to sit down and do an interview with him. It was in this interview that she stated that everything she had said was a lie. Emmett Till had done nothing wrong. He had never made crude comments towards her or made any sexual advances. He was murdered for no reason. His blood was on her hands. The death of Emmett Till was completely and utterly unnecessary. His blood was spilled because of the ideology that blacks were inferior. His death caused by an angry, racist white male. Justice for Emmett Till was only presented because of the guilt that weighed down on Carolyn Bryant. After years of staying silent, she finally came forward. But it didn't matter then. Emmett was dead, and he had been for years. His death showed what was wrong with America. It showed how racism controlled almost anything, and yet it changed almost everything.